All right, check, 1, 2. We are rolling, ladies and gentlemen. We're freaking rolling. We are locked and loaded. So you clicked on this video because you are struggling to actually write that draft. It's probably a story that is important to you. It's probably an idea that you can't quite get out of your mind. But every time you want to write, you sit down and you feel like you can't get anything done. You feel like you have all this stress about writing. But then when you walk away and you're not working on that story, for some reason, that story is sitting in the back of your mind. And you kind of want to get back to it and you want to work on it and you wish it was done. But then when you go sit down again, you can't get anything done. And you feel frustrated and you feel like you're in this limbo between, are you serious about this story or not? And then you're also like, I want to write it, but then again, I don't know what the point is because I don't have any connections to publishers or producers or any of these people that would take it somewhere else. And so you kind of feel stuck. And I have been speaking to writers recently, viewers of the YouTube channel, in Zoom meetings. I've just been having different meetings, just talking and kind of getting a sense of what's been going on with you all, what kind of struggles you're facing, what sort of great work you guys are doing. Some of you guys are doing super cool stuff. If you've talked to me recently, some of you are doing really interesting work. Links below this video if you'd like to speak to me for a brief meeting. But you feel stuck. And I keep meeting writers and I feel like I have covered these topics before and yet I really haven't. And so I want to talk today about what's actually going on when you're sitting down, when you're trying to write. What's really happening? What's the purpose of this at all? What's going on when you're writing a story, when you find an idea that you feel like doesn't leave you? There's a reason for that. See, writing is not just a thing that we do for no reason. Writing is actually a very deep and personally meaningful task, regardless of whether you're commercially successful or whether you work in Hollywood or any of these things. Writing is fundamentally productive because what's going on, the reason that you're struggling to write is essentially this. Writing is a process of facing your unconscious self. When you have a story idea that you feel like won't leave you alone, but you feel like every time you sit down to write it, you can't work on it. But it's been in your head for a while. That story might be sitting in your mind for years. You might have been carrying around this idea for years. And for some reason, it just won't leave you. But every time you try to write it, you feel like you can't get anything done. The reason for this is because writing is facing your unconscious mind, facing elements of yourself that you might not have dealt with, facing energies that you might be carrying that you need to, in some form of therapy, let's say, work through. And that really is what a story is. First and foremost, your story is for you. It is not for Hollywood. It is not for an audience. It is not for any of these other things first. First and foremost, that story is for you, because what is happening is you are taking a journey into your unconscious mind and working on yourself. A lot of the times when writers come to my YouTube channel and they start learning all this stuff about story theory and writing methods and structures and all of these things that I teach, and a lot of that stuff is good, but a lot of this is sort of left brain, conscious mind thinking, right? This is your analytical mind. It is your self-criticizer. It is the adult inside of you, essentially, right? That sweeps the floor and checks and edits and kind of looks over your shoulder and makes sure you're doing it the right way. On the other side of your mind is your unconscious mind, and this also is where your inner creative child lies. right? That spirit in you that was in you ever since you were born, that creates without inhibition, that creates without limitation, that creates without thinking, that creates organically. And what happens is, when you're trying to approach a story, you get caught up because you feel like you can't reconcile these two spirits essentially inside of you, right? You have this criticizer, this analyzer, this one inside of you that sees good art and wants what you're doing now to be good art. And so therefore wants to edit you every single second you're trying to put something on the page. Say, oh, is that really the right way to do it? Are you doing this correct? Are you doing that correct? And then on the other side is that right hand side of your brain, that right hand hemisphere, the childlike unconscious mind inside of you that is unconscious awareness, that has a desire to simply create without judgment, create without inhibition, create without limitation. And you feel like you're stuck between these two worlds. And the most practical way to think about this is essentially this, and this is something that I have been struggling, or not struggling, but something that I have been working through as I'm working on a story right now that is very important to me, is that that structural sort of adult side of your brain that analyzes and criticizes and this sort of thing, that side of you is very helpful and it has its place, and many times that side is great to start getting a sense of your outline, getting a sense of the big picture of the story, so that you kind of stay generally in the bounds of what you're trying to say, what you're trying to do. However, once you get into pages, once you're actually looking at that script document, or you're looking at that Google Docs file, or you're looking at that Word document on your computer, that is the time to put away that conscious criticizer. That is the time to forget everything you've ever watched on my YouTube channel consciously. Because here's the reality. All that information that you have learned, it exists inside of you, like you hold it in you. You don't have to be consciously thinking about all of those different structures and paradigms and ideas and beat sheets. You don't have to hold all of that in your mind when you're trying to write. Trying to hold all of that in your mind while you're trying to write is the conscious, criticizing, left brain side of yourself that is trying to control and manage every single piece of the story that you're trying to tell. But once you're actually in the pages, you have to let go of that editor, that criticizer, that constant judger, and allow that child inside of you, that creator inside of you that acts on instinct. You have to allow them to come forward, and you have to sit in the peace of knowing that you are okay, you are not inadequate, you are not a terrible writer, you're not any of these things. You are a creator, you are a writer, and when you tap into that unconscious mind, you tap into your ultimate creativity. And this gives you a certain freedom to write scenes without judgment. I'm not saying that that's perfectly easy and that you just get to write without any emotion, right? There's always this sort of emotional turmoil that happens when you are writing something that is actually meaningful, because your story is meaningful to you. It is important to you. That's why it won't leave you alone. And so in a way, you kind of have to surrender to this unconscious self inside of you that is trying to get that story out and say, okay, I'm going to show up and I'm going to work on this story. Many times in the past, and if you've taken my practical screenwriting course, you've heard me talk about setting certain structures on writing, in the sense of you need to write 3 pages a day, or you need to write for an hour, or you need to write in these different ways. The more that I write, though, the more I have found that telling yourself you have to write a certain amount of pages, or telling yourself you have to write a certain amount of hours or a certain amount of minutes, all these things do is keep you in that critical left brain, analyzing, controlling mind. Instead, I think it is best to simply tell yourself you are going to write. and you're going to pick a point in the day to write. You're going to pick a time, and whether you write for 15 minutes or you write for 5 hours, either way, the point is you're facing the story. And that's my biggest advice to you. If you're in that outline, you've been in that outline for years, you've been stuck, you've been struggling, you can't quite get that draft out, you feel like you're stopping and starting and all of this. Ultimately, it's about showing up and facing that story, and that's it. Don't hold on to all these ideas about how it has to work. There is a real, you have to find that awareness that is outside of your constant stream of thoughts. This constant stream of thoughts in your mind that tells you how everything has to work, who you are, all of this, you have to detach from that, because you are not that. You are pure awareness. You are pure creative awareness. You are an entity of creativity. And all these labels that the external world tries to place on you and sort of places you in this daily chronological timeline where you got to hit this habit and this habit and this habit and this habit. All of that is created by this sort of adult thinker, criticizer side of your mind. And that's all well and good, but you have to be able to tap into this part of you that has always been there. When you were born and you were 4 years old and you were creating as a child and maybe painting or playing in the sand, was the art that you were creating, were you judging it? No, of course not, because you were simply aware and alive, right? And in that same way, if you're really going to get into that stuff inside of you that's holding you down or keeping your vibration low or making it so that your brain is telling you that you have to tell this story for you, not for somebody else, but for you, for your own mental clarity, to sort of clean out your own system, if you will, you have to tap into that organic creator. And when you always bring in this criticizer, right? This critic that comes in and tries to analyze and say, you have to do it this way and you have to do it that way and blah, 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 blah. That's only going to slow you down. And I think for many people, they have kind of made that me in their head. As I've been talking to writers, it kind of seems like, they're like, oh, well, but what would Tyler think if this or da, 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 da. It's like, I'm not here to criticize what you were trying to do. I am here to help. I am here to fan the flames of your creativity. Don't think of me as this judge who's always waiting for you to fail. That is not what I'm trying to do. I think maybe some of that has been me projecting out because of my own self-criticism and from my own intense critic who sits on my shoulder and looks at what I do and all of this. I have that, and but it's okay. And I don't have to make that my identity, right? I can live in creative awareness. I can just sort of be, right? In the same way that I'm trying to make some of these videos. I have other videos that are highly edited video essays and these sorts of things. But with these videos, I am just trying to speak without thinking about what I'm saying and transmit to you the message that you need to hear, which is that you have to face that draft. I keep speaking to writers that say, hey, I've been following you for 2 years. I'm still on that first draft. I've been following you for 3 years, 4 years. I'm still on, I haven't really actually gotten a project done. I've been following you for all this time and I haven't really gotten this done. And I'm not here to criticize or judge or say, you should have finished your draft. That's not what this is about. The point is, there's a reason that story is still with you. There's a reason. It's not just because you're like, oh, this is a career opportunity. It is with you because there is a part of your own self-analysis that is waiting behind that story. There is a part of the story of who you are, a part of your own mind trying to communicate to you by telling you that the story that is in you needs to come out. And that is a cathartic experience. And it is an emotional roller coaster. It is a toiling. It is a wrestling, right? People get in this state of like, oh wow, every time I sit down to write, I feel all these emotions. And then I can't write because I'm afraid. Yes. Yes. That is absolutely what you're going to feel. Through that fear sits the lesson that you have to take from that story. Through that fear sits a clarity of mind that you gain by simply showing up and working on that story. Not saying that, oh, I got to complete it this way, I got to do it this way, but simply showing up and facing it in peace and saying, I'm not going to control all of this. I can't. I need to get into this state of flow, into this state of pure awareness, into this state where my unconscious mind is allowed to be free, and I can work in this. Because when you're in that draft, no one else is seeing it. It's only for you. It's you communicating to yourself. And it's your unconscious or subconscious mind trying to tell you something that will ultimately be for your benefit. We all have situations in our lives and events that happen that we don't quite work through, right? And this is why people talk about how therapy can be helpful, because what therapy is doing is it is bringing up these unconscious or subconscious ideas to the forefront so that you can have that emotional cathartic experience, so that you can cry in that therapist's office and actually understand, oh my gosh, this is what I was missing this whole time and now I can see it. A story is the same thing. You don't need some sort of outside therapist or outside force to tell you what it is that you need to learn. It is already inside of you. But you must accept that reality, and many times it is a writing of that story that is autobiographical by its nature, and it is a mirror. It is a mirror of who you are, what you think about, what your mind dwells on. And that is why it is so valuable. That's why writing is so valuable. That's why it doesn't matter if you have, all the connections to get a sale and all of this that people get caught up in. It's like, that's all well and good, but first and foremost, as a writer, as somebody who knows writing is valuable, as somebody who's worked on projects, and as somebody who holds that you have that idea that won't leave you alone, you have to face it. Because it is beckoning you. It is showing you where the next level of the game is. Life is a game in that way, right? Life is a single player game of self-analysis. And the one who is most self-analyzing in a positive way and who brings their self-analysis into and they're able to self-edit their world and sort of understand what they really want and what they really desire and all of these things. The one that is the most self-aware and can self-analyze wins in that way, right? If you want to sort of get out of that frustration that you feel, a story is a great way to do so. And if you feel like there's a story that won't leave you alone, that's purposeful. It's on purpose. It is the universe or your unconscious mind or God, depending on how you want to define it, trying to say, hey, look at this. Think more about this. When you get fear, when you feel fear, when you sit in front of that story, that's good. Because through that fear is the next level of the game. The fears that hold you in place, they are showing you the way into the next part of the game, the next level of self-awareness, the next level of understanding yourself, the next level of understanding the world, the next level of knowing what it is you might need to account for so that you can raise your vibration, so that you can be healthier, so that you can live with a cleaner mind, so that you can live with a more unified mind, right? Bringing together that criticizer and that creative child together so that you can live in a state of peace, right? Of unity, of the two hemispheres of your own mind. And this is why Dan Harmon discusses the idea that your conscious mind is the upstairs of your home, where people come in and play Scrabble and people enjoy your company and everything is nice and clean and polite, and you get to present a certain image to other people. And then that basement is full of the creepy crawlies of that house, and the water heater that needs to get fixed, and the different machines that keep the whole system running. And if you never journey down into that unconscious mind and face what's down there, then slowly but surely the problems down there get worse and worse and worse, and then suddenly they come to the forefront. And this is what we call mental breakdowns and these kinds of things, where there is stuff in your unconscious mind that you're not dealing with for so long that it ends up coming forward and causing havoc in your real world. And part of the way you can avoid that is through a good story that you tell. The best story is the one that you tell, because you're the one that knows you the most. You're the one that knows your own flaws the most. You're the one that knows your own desires the most. You're the one that knows what you want and how you wish the world would be, and you're the one that knows, right? And if you can do the difficult work of facing that story, sitting down in front of that computer, in front of that notebook, in front of that phone, and say, I'm gonna be at peace. I'm not gonna judge my emotions. I'm not gonna judge what I write. I'm gonna explore this story. I don't know how long it's gonna take me to write, but what I do know is I'm gonna face this story. I'm not gonna sit in fear of my own inadequacy or of my own blah, 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 because all that is me trying to hold myself back from my own growth. And I deserve to continue my growth. That is the game of life. The game of life is not about how much money can you stack up. The game of life, oh, my mic is falling. The game of life is not about how many people think you're cool. The game of life is not about these things. The game of life ultimately is self-mastery and self-awareness. How do you do that? You do that by understanding what your fears are. You do that by understanding what your desires are. Being honest with yourself about who you are and accepting that and moving towards that in a way that you're integrating your fears and conquering them, and in a way that you're seeing and integrating your desires and moving towards them, not just in the physical world, but also through your energy, right? You're beginning to become a more integrated person because you are more aware of what you are and what you want and why you are in the place that you're at. There's a short book I read recently. You can find it on YouTube. It's called As a Man Thinketh. And this short book essentially discusses just how much our thoughts influence our reality. They influence the energy we send to other people. They influence where we choose to live. They influence what we choose to spend our time on. And one of the best ways that you can analyze your own train of thought is by writing it out, especially in a story form. And analyze, why is this the story I want to tell? Why am I putting my characters in this position? Why is this the part of the story that I feel like I can never write through? Why is this where I get the most fear? That is the process of literally leveling up your existence. You know, there's people that are multi-millionaires that are totally depressed. There's people that have no money at all that are grateful and live joyous lives, right? Ultimately, the battle that you are in is a battle of self-awareness and self-peace and finding that. And stories are one of the best ways to understand your own self. So what I'm here to tell you is face that story. You don't need to set a timer for an hour and say, I'm going to write for a full hour. You don't need to set and say, I'm going to write 3 pages a day. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but you need to face it seriously. You need to show up. You need to remove your other distractions, and you need to say, you know what, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to allow, and I'm not going to work on it through my conscious mind either. I'm not going to sit there and try to control every single little piece of this. I'm going to show up, and I'm going to allow my unconscious mind to take over. I'm going to act on instinct. I'm going to allow this story to show me what it is I need to learn first and foremost. Before I show it to anybody else, before I start editing the story, before any of that, I'm going to show up and allow this story to show me what it is I need to know. Face that story. If it's been sitting on your computer for 3 years, it's time to open it up. It's time to face it. Just a little bit every day. That's all. Find a bit of quiet time every day. If you can do that, you will get through that story. And it will illuminate elements of your life that you are unaware of. It will. It will. I hope this has been helpful. If you're interested in speaking with me, links below for that. Links below for all the stuff, website, Discord, all that sort of stuff. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.